X-Men. Get it!
Hey everyone, and welcome to Battle of the Atom. This is the podcast where we rank all the X-Men stories from A to Z.
Hi, I'm Adam.
And I'm Zack. We got a real interesting show for all you guys today because, Adam, do you know who is joining us on this episode?
Oh, guys, we have an amazing special guest. You may have pestered him online about spoilers, and you rely on him every X-Men Monday. Zack, tell him who's with us today.
It is Jordan D. White. Jordan, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm okay.
Good. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
So we're going to jump into it. Jordan, you are the, what is your actual official title?
Just editor. I guess some books call me the X-Men group editor, which means that I have other editors that I oversee working on some of the X-Men books, but I'm just a plain old editor.
See, I've just been telling everyone who will listen that, you know, you are the guy in charge of all things X-Men, and they say, Zack, I don't care. We're at work. Why are you talking to me about X-Men?
But I mean, technically, I'm in charge of more than that because I also do the cosmic books right now, like
Right.
Infinity Wars and Infinity Countdown, stuff like that.
And Jordan, before this, you were in charge of Deadpool and the Star Wars line, right?
Deadpool and Star Wars as well.
Wow.
I'm sad to have left them behind, but I think X-Men is a worthy thing to take over instead.
We like to think so. So
Yeah.
Speaking of X-Men, I mean, what's your background with the X-Men before it became a career thing? What role did X-Men play in your life?
Never really heard of them. No. So I've been reading comics since I was a tiny child. I'm old at this point. I'm not that old. I'm well, depends on who I'm talking to. I always feel super old when I talk to my assistants because they're stupid younger than me. But what am I, 38 now? So I've been reading comics probably since I was, probably 5 or younger. I honestly don't remember a time when I didn't read comics or have comics read to me at the very least. Spider-Man was always my first love comic book wise and kind of continues to be. But I was always a big fan of Marvel, and I would basically read any comic you put in front of me. If I went to a store and there were comic books, I would ask to buy one no matter what. So it wasn't that long before I got into X-Men stuff as well. My biggest X-Men love was Excalibur. I started reading Excalibur on a regular basis right around the time. I don't remember the issue number. I guess it was 30 something. Right around the time they had a big guest appearance by the West Coast Avengers, and they went to Limbo.
What a random choice. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, well, that was when I got them.
Yeah.
That being said, I also just started back then. Again, modern day listeners will be like, what do you mean you had to look for back issues? But I was searching for back issues for the years that followed because I loved Excalibur so much. I would get my hands on whatever I could and be like, okay, I have issues, 4, 5, 9, 13, 14, you know what I mean? Like you'd have to like piece the story together as you got the different bits of it, which was super fun. Eventually I did collect the full run of Excalibur, and that was like I said, that was my main X-Men love. That being said, I obviously I bought X-Men #1 like every person on Earth did.
You and 7 million other people, right?
I don't think 7 million people actually.
No, that's
bought that
I know.
book.
I think 1 million people bought 7 copies each, maybe.
Yeah, there you go.
I only have 3 copies of that.
I've got the fold out one, and I think that's the only one I've got.
That's the best one.
Yeah, of course.
That's the important one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Why would you want any other one, really?
So you could put 4 of them together and make a fold out version yourself.
And not have the poster on the inside.
Yeah, that's a good poster. It's a great poster.
X-Men
Hey, this is editor version of Zack cutting in here real quick. I'm just going to say in the next 10-ish minutes, there were some connection issues with Jordan's side. The audio is still there, but it drops in quality and some of it's a bit choppy. If you want to skip all that, go to around the 14-minute mark and you should be past it. Sorry about that.
X-Men.
And then I also had, I mean, and that's the thing. So I would just get whatever comics. I would get all sorts of comics. So that was the era when I was buying comics, a little bit before X-Men #1 and X-Men comics, especially a little bit before X-Men #1 and then after X-Men #1, and X-Force and X-Factor and all the crazy things. For a while, I fell out of comics when I went to college, as a lot of people do. But I had an odd experience, kind of the opposite of what most people have, which was when I got married. My wife and I got each other more into comics because we were both kind of casual fans, and we passed on at the time anyway, and we passed on our love of specific things to each other. So she got me back into reading in a big way by introducing me to Strangers in Paradise, and then I made her read Savage Dragon. She had a good time, so it's okay.
It's a big jarring shift.
But totally. But from there, that's when my comic reading went bananas. And I started with the ones I had been collecting. Again, my favorite one, Spider-Man and Savage Dragon, and this one and that one. And then eventually it got to a point where I was reading not literally every comic Marvel put out, but most of them, the large bulk of them. And I would say that was around the time of Grant Morrison. And okay. I was able to dive into X-Men in a big way then. Grant Morrison, and who was writing the other book? Was it Joe Casey?
Joe Casey for the start, and then Chuck Austin afterwards.
I remember starting picking up the trade of Poptopia, right?
Poptopia, yeah.
And getting collect from then on. And I've been an X-Men reader pretty solidly since then. Obviously, then I did work in the X-Men office before. I was working under Mr. Nick Lowe as his assistant editor. That was maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I started a little bit before Schism, and I stuck around until right around the time of Amazing X-Men starting. Is when I shifted off of the X books for the most part. And now I'm back, but in charge. It's totally different.
All new, all different.
And everybody messed everything up since I left too, so I'll fix it all. No, I'm kidding.
No, that's interesting. Now, in the meantime, you, like Adam said, you were over in the Deadpool and Star Wars world, as well as with the cosmic books that you're doing now. And one of the interesting things that I always noticed about Deadpool and Star Wars in particular is they used miniseries a ton. There was always at least one, if not multiple, in each of those families going on. For you, what was the advantage of having a miniseries format on that? And do you think that makes sense for the X line?
That's a great question. I think, with the Deadpool books, what happened was it kind of became this weird conventional wisdom for a while that, not including big summer blockbuster event kind of things, miniseries didn't sell. It was just this thing of, miniseries are a bad idea. They don't sell that well. And I don't really know exactly why it happened. I think it was I think it probably came from too many miniseries being done, and people kind of feeling like they weren't special anymore. I mean, when miniseries started, they were special. It was a big deal that, there's only going to be 4 issues in this story. Well, first of all, a story that carried over 4 issues at that time was like, what?
Oh, yeah.
But there's only going to be 4 and then it's over. That's unusual because that's back when comics were just ongoings and they never relaunched. But for a while, it was conventional wisdom that they didn't sell. And then I don't know what happened, but I was working on Deadpool and they asked me, hey, do a Deadpool miniseries. In fact, somebody suggested at Marvel, hey, you should do Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe. And I was like, that sounds like a fun idea. What would that be? And so I got together with Cullen and we figured out a really fun book for it. And it worked really well. That's still a huge selling book to this day. Literally year after year, the trade does great. And I think the advantage on that and on all of the Deadpool minis, or at least the bulk of them that I did, is that they were kind of, I want to say entirely out of continuity. Some of them were, some of them weren't. But at the very least, they were kind of unburdened by continuity, if you know what I mean. They were even the ones that were in continuity, like for example, Bull versus Carnage, right? It wasn't so rooted in everything that's happening right now that you couldn't just pick it up. If you were a Deadpool fan who's just like, I know what Deadpool is, I think he's interesting. Oh, I know Carnage is. They're going to fight. That's cool. You could pick it up, and it was very accessible. And I think that worked to the advantage in those Deadpool ones a lot. Deadpool versus Gambit.
Oh, I love that one.
It was super fun, right? And I think you could definitely say, oh, that happens in continuity. When exactly? Well, I don't know, like right around here, sure, why not? But it's not like, again, it didn't reflect, oh, they're going home to Utopia at the end of the day, or where's Deadpool's wife, or any of that stuff. It was just like, it happens. You can check it out. If you know Gambit, you know Deadpool, you're good. That, I think, was a big help. In Star Wars is a little different too, because in Star Wars, they tell stories very differently. Because in Star Wars world, well, so in let me step back. In Marvel stories, the large bulk of the stories that Marvel is telling take place, quote unquote, now. When now is like shifting kind of constantly, obviously, like real life. But I mean, also in that, the now of a book from 20 years ago still needs to be close to now. I'm getting off topic. The point is, we generally are telling stories about now going forward, and all the stories take place, in and around the same time, and they all interconnect, and et cetera, et cetera. With Star Wars, that's not the case. With Star Wars, there's a timeline, and there is no now in the timeline. You're telling stories jumping around all over the place. So that, as a result, with Star Wars, they much prefer doing finite stories. Doing an ongoing story runs an ongoing series runs a risk, because you go, well, wait, but like there's a timeline and we have to stick to it, and we can't, just go forever like we can with Marvel, hopefully. So sorry, this is a super man. I feel like I'm babbling. I'm so sorry. Feel free to interrupt me.
No, this is good. This is good.
Would that work with X-Men? Both of those examples. I think the answer is there's definitely room for them. I believe that they are like a thing that should be avoided at all costs, like sometimes I felt in the past. I think they can, especially knowing that there is, there are about 50,000 characters in the X-Men, and don't tell me I said this, but not all of them can support their own book.
You're kidding.
But that's...
Is that why my Maggot series hasn't been like ongoing?
That doesn't mean that
years?
they can't tell a great story. And, I think, it's a good example. Well, Rogue and Gambit just had a miniseries now. That's a weird example because they're also getting an ongoing series. But,
yeah, I was about to say.
But part of that is based on the fact that there was a miniseries and it did really well. We're bringing Iceman back to do another story. Will there be other ones? I mean, I happen to know there are going to be other miniseries for sure. So, yes, I think it can work, and I hope that the X fans will support it as well as the Deadpool fans. And I mean, again, the difference though is that this is a weird thing to say because Deadpool's history is complicated, but it's not as complicated as the X-Men.
That's true.
Fair.
And partially that's also because you can kind of ignore it. It's so complicated that you could kind of go, Deadpool's history is fine, don't worry about it. With the X-Men, I guess so my point being with Deadpool is that you can know very little about Deadpool and go, oh, what, this one's about Deadpool fighting zombies? Great. I know what Deadpool is, and I know what zombies is. So, all right. Whereas if I go, oh, it's going to be about, we're going to do the series about the fact that Shatterstar and Longstar are each other's fathers. That's complicated, and not everybody's going to jump on board right away. Fingers crossed that they will find a way to like characters.
We need to revisit that topic later in the show, I think. What do you think, Zach? The Shatterstar?
We had the Daddy Boros as something to bring up with the listener questions.
Absolutely.
Yes. But no, that's, I mean, I'd say, in the last, I guess, since 2018 has started, the X line has supported a number of miniseries between Legion, Rogue and Gambit, and the currently running New Mutants book. And I think as a reader, I've had a lot of enjoyment on that because, there's a finite thing, what you're getting into. But at the same time, I can see the concerns, like New Mutants as a, shining example of that book has a lot of continuity going into it. I love it. I think it's great. But you got to deal with the end of the X Factor stuff with Richter and with Strong Guy and Wolfsbane and all that. And I wouldn't hand that to someone as their first X book.
Right. That can be tricky. I mean, that is kind of the big That's the big problem with X-Men. I mean, I don't want to say it that way because that makes it sound like X-Men is a bad thing. X-Men's wonderful, but that's the thing you're always fighting against. X-Men is the most complicated family of books. I mean, the Avengers isn't even close. It's not even close. There's a couple of characters in Avengers that have complications, but it's not even in the realm of X-Men. Every character in X-Men has had a relationship with every other character. Half of them are related, but most of those relations involve time travel. Like it's so difficult to hand somebody a book cold and go, just you got it, you'll get it. That being said, people do it. My old boss at Nick Lowe used to talk about, I forget what issue it was, but his first issue of X-Men was sometime in that same 90s era. It was, I think, like X-Men number 5 or something like that. Where he said, yeah, I picked it up and I had no clue who anyone was or what was going on, but I thought it was so cool that I wanted to know. And that's awesome. And I hope that works for everyone, but it's definitely a challenge to try to go, can you do an X book that is both enjoyable to the people who do know that stuff, but also accessible to the people who don't?
I think we're talking a little bit about minis here, but there have been traditionally a set number of X team books, that have kind of set up the secret recipe for what the X world is. And depending on which generation of the books we're looking at, we kind of started with how much can Claremont handle, right? And that's how we got New Mutants. That's how, editorially you get X Factor, but you also got Excalibur out of it. And then over the years, you get all these different sort of splintering ideas formulating the line. Do you think that even in 2018, that there's sort of like a secret recipe for what the balance of the line should be in terms of team books versus solo books versus minis? Or is it just kind of what's working with sales and what people are responding to?
Well, I mean, obviously sales is a huge factor. It's one of the things I have to reckon with every day, but I try to do the most enjoyable books for myself and the readers as well. I mean, there's no secret formula. There's no like thing we have written down where we're like, let's check all these boxes for sure. But it is something I think about a lot. I mean, I think the bulk of the X-Men books are always going to be team books because, well, multiple reasons, but a lot of it has to do with, in the end, what the X-Men always is about is stuff that is more applicable to groups of people, that the kind of social family that we choose, things like that. And, the group of mutants as a I don't want to say race, as a species. Right. And the number of solo characters who we know for sure can support a book ongoing is like Wolverine, and then that's about it for sure. Like then then we cross our fingers and we hope that we can get other ones to work, and sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. And hopefully, if there's a strong enough story and a great team of creators, we can make something that really sings with the fans. But I think that solo books in the X-Men line are kind of like icing on the cake sort of a situation. We will really always be looking at the line as a line of teams, which is, as you said, it was originally a team, but I mean, honestly, how many mutants are there living in the mansion right now?
Oh, that's a staggering question.
You would know?
I don't have the figure, I'll tell you that, but it's a huge
There's no
number.
spreadsheet at Marvel that would answer that question.
I was actually working on a spreadsheet. So there was a spreadsheet at one point. I know that is when I was in the X office the first time, Nick Lowe did curate a spreadsheet that had a list of all the mutants, all the depowered mutants as well. And kind of trying to keep track of where they were all in the universe and what they were doing. I think the thing is that kind of thing, while it's super awesome, doesn't always get handed off from editor to editor as well as you'd hope. So I don't think that list consistently stayed being in use since Nick left the X books, unfortunately. So I was not handed it when I got here. I have been thinking about trying to start one up, but geez, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I tasked an intern with trying to make a list of every mutant that existed, and their semester ended when they left. So.
I mean, isn't that what the Marvel Wikia is for? Just, crowdsource all that stuff and go with it?
Oh no, totally. And that's a good place to start for sure. But then you have to go like, yeah, but which first of all, I'm sure there's a ton of like alternate universe characters on there and dead characters, and it's so
endless. It's quite endless.
But I think, to me as a reader, and as a hopefully as an editor, you know what, I should actually preface this and say something that I wonder, probably not a ton of your listeners know, but it's a good thing to know. The books that I'm working on, all the X-Men books that you've read with my name on them, I have, of course, worked really hard on them, but for the most part, at this point, none of them are things that I initiated. If you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
They're all things that were in progress in some form or other when I got into the X-Men world. Even though, how many months have I been here on there? Like quite a few at this point, maybe even like 6 months at this point. Close to it at least. But all of these things, the Return of Wolverine stuff, the Hunt for Wolverine books, especially, like everything that you guys have read that has come out since I've been on X-Men was in some capacity being worked on before I got on there. In fact, I'm trying to think if even everything that's been announced, it already was in motion before I got there. I think that's true, which is not to say I didn't affect any of it, and not to say I didn't influence any of it, because when you actually work on the books, you do a ton of things. I'm just saying they weren't things that I set in motion to begin with. The things that I set in motion will so that I will have been involved from conception through final execution. I think we'll be starting around October. The things we in the October catalog.
So the next solicitations.
That is the next solicitations. The things that are in there will be things that did not. Some of them anyway will be things that were not even fathomed of before I was in there, which is really exciting and fun. So wait, why did I bring that up?
I don't know.
Wait, what was the question I was answering?
Something about what the X-Men line should look like.
Yes. No, exactly. Right. So that explains a little bit of why I mentioned it. So my point being, what the X-Men line is right now isn't something that I set up. And, obviously that sort of thing takes time to change, as you move forward with things. But as a reader and as a editor, one of the things I think is most important in the X-Men line is, and it is something that I think the line has struggled with over the years at different points, is making sure that if there are different books, they are distinct, and they are distinct in more ways than just they have different casts. Because I don't think that's enough. I don't think it's enough to just say there are 5 books that are all just X-Men doing stuff. Like, what makes this X-Men different from this X-Men? Like, what do these ones want versus what those ones want? And, again, you can talk all you want about the quality of the books in the 90s, but I think that's something that, at least at the beginning of that period, they did very well, in that it was like, here's what the X-Men are about. Here's what X-Force is about. Here's what X-Factor is about. Here's what Excalibur is about. Like, they're all very different kinds of books. And they all have a similar theme and flavor to them, and you can enjoy all of them at once, but you don't end up going, what's the point of X-Force if you've got X-Men? Well, it's very different.
Yeah.
They want to shoot things. I don't know.
Well, I think that's an excellent point, though, is the idea that the original tone of a lot of the original books were so vastly different. I would argue that a lot of the line right now does feel vastly different. You've got Guggenheim doing, I think, a lot of people have accused him of sort of being retro and what it is that he's doing. Bunn is really going a lot more obscure with his storytelling. And then we've had, some other series like Gen X or some of the solo series that have gotten some writers and artists to flex their muscles in different directions.
Mhm.
So I'm really interested to see where things go. Obviously, I don't want you to share any spoilers, but I'm very interested to see where you see those tonal differences going between the books.
There are some crazy plans coming up. I mean, things will start getting announced in October, but I think even after that, we actually have plans. I mean, not like the plans get more vague as you go, but we've got plans for next year that are bananas. So it's going to be fun.
That's exciting. That is exciting to hear. So one of the things that has come up recently, I know you mentioned it earlier, and I know it's been a topic of a lot of debate in different fan circles, is bringing back books that did well in trades.
Mhm.
Like Iceman, for example, that's coming back this fall with Cena Grace and Nate Stockman, I believe, is doing the art on that one.
Yep.
And that's a book that had a lot of people talking about it, but may not have burnt up the sales charts. So what would really drive you to bring a book like that back versus something else?
I mean, I wish there was a really it. I wish there was a better answer than it all comes down to money and sales.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
when that Iceman got announced, the immediate reaction that I saw on X-Men Twitter was not, "Oh my god, it's so awesome that Iceman came back." It was, "Why isn't Generation X coming back?"
X-Men Twitter really likes Generation X. I'm gonna
But
part
they
of
didn't
that's
buy
my
it.
fault, but yes, we all kind of adored that book.
Totally, and that's great, and that's awesome. That being said, like honestly, there's no like weird answer here other than that the amount of sales that Iceman was getting in trades, what ended up as a bigger, when that is factored into all of the equations that Marvel does to see what makes the most money, like that made the money to keep going. And sadly, Generation X did not. And again, that's not a comment on the quality of the book. There's a lot of great books that I have loved passionately that have not, unfortunately, been able to keep going. But that's the financial reality of the industry and of the state of Marvel and things like that. There are a number of books in the line right now that don't sell that great in comic shops, but do very well in bookstores and things like that. There's Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. There's
Yay.
Squirrel Girl.
Yay.
There's to some degree Ms. Marvel, which does better in comic stores than those other books, but also disproportionately sells well in trades.
Right.
So that's good, because what that is that's a sign of books reaching new audiences. The people who want to read Iceman and don't necessarily want to read a regular old X-Men book or a regular sadly Generation X book are picking it up in bookstores going, I just want to read Iceman for a specific reason, because I've heard good things about the story, I'm into the message of it, I'm into the etc. And that's one of the best places that we can expand our audience.
Now, I don't know if you're allowed to talk about this at all, but could you maybe expand on like how, is that a mandate that would come down? Because just to be clear, I think Zack and I are both excited for Iceman to come back. We interviewed Cena at the wrap of the initial run, and we both felt like he was hitting a stride at the end of that series. And that last issue was terrific. So if he can pick back up, I think it's going to be really, really good. So we want to be clear on that, we don't want to talk anything ill about that series coming back. But when a trade is doing well, is this a conversation that you guys have behind the scenes where they're, maybe from a business perspective, they're just saying, yeah, you got to bring this one back, and you don't have an option to say no?
Yeah, well, that's a weird, that presupposes that we would say no. Like,
okay.
Why would we do
I like
that
answer.
Right. Like, generally speaking, we want to make more of all the comics we make.
Okay.
so them, it was more a case of, unfortunately that book was canceled.
Yeah.
Yep. So that was a sad thing. I mean, I wasn't working on that book when it got canceled. I don't even know if I was there yet. I can't remember. But, that book got canceled and everybody involved was like, okay, well, unfortunately we can't keep going. And then time goes by and they go, hey, guess what? Your trade did really well. You could do more. And so, we were like, awesome. Yes. Let's call Cena and get this happening. Yeah, absolutely. I guess there is a possibility that we could be putting out a book we don't enjoy doing and they'll say, do more of it because it's doing so well. But that's not generally speaking. Yeah, no, typically we like the books we're doing.
Well, so. I mean, Zack mentioned this a couple minutes ago, but I think we both agree that you've been doing an amazing job interacting on social media with what can absolutely be a difficult fan base. You mentioned the reaction to the Iceman relaunch and people probably just, bitching and moaning a little bit about Gen X not coming back. How do you what's the key to peacefully and constructively conversing with a fan base that has been famously difficult even since letter columns of yore?
Well, I always do my best to try to interact with fans in a positive way because I love comics and I want to talk about comics and talk about what's exciting about them and why I love them the most. Which is not to say you can't poke fun at them. I love poking fun at the things I love. Much to my wife's chagrin. No, but there was back in the old days, there was in the old days, what a ridiculous thing to say. Many years ago, there was a thing called, before the internet, basically, there was a thing called the Nitpicker's Guide to Star Trek. Have you ever heard of this?
I have not, no.
Okay. So it was literally, again, it was before, the internet existed, but it was before we were on websites all the time. Yeah. This dude did books that were literally nitpicking every episode of Star Trek and then Star Trek The Next Generation.
That's terrible.
So you could watch an episode of Star Trek and then look in the book and it would say oh, they get in the turbo lift and they don't have to hold the handle to control it when sometimes they do. And he didn't hit the button for his communicator. He just talks. Is it listening it all the time? Because that was ridiculous back then that you could just call out to the computer.
Yeah, that's nuts. No one would do that.
He's got to touch himself.
But it would point out logic things as well and silly things and flubs and et cetera, et cetera. But it was done in love. Obviously the people who wrote this book and, me reading this book loved Star Trek The Next Generation. We weren't going, yeah, well, this is garbage. What idiots they are making this. We were going, no, that's really funny. That's really funny. And we like to point out, if you ever watch that show, my favorite thing is the thing where they won't tell anyone anything important over the thing. They always go, I think you better come see this.
Yeah.
It's just tell me.
Beam down to the planet so you can get killed.
Or no, but even if it's I'm in engineering and you're on the bridge, they're I think you're going to want to come down here, sir. It's no, just tell me what it is. We have video screens. Can you just bring up the video? Show me what it is. Anyway, and I feel that, so of course you can have fun. You can poke fun at it. I do that all the time with my comics, with other people's comics in good fun. There's a lot of negativity. I try not to engage in that. Or if I do, I try to engage in it playfully, that in a way that shows that hey guys, this is fun. We don't have to get upset about it. Because I like comic book fans. I am a comic book fan. I have been hanging out with comic book fans my whole life. I think my first interactions, I did forget another X thing I worked on. My first interactions with the X-Men fandom as a Marvel employee was very early on. One of the first books I ever worked on at Marvel was Exiles, and then shortly thereafter, New Exiles. In fact, the first book with my name in it, I believe, is Exiles number 99.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I remember going on the CBR boards when New Exiles was coming out.
Talk about nitpicking.
They're an interesting place. They're a very interesting place. You can't go, what is it? I think somebody would start a topic and you can't go 2 posts without it coming about each other rather than the books. But that's fine. That's have fun. It's a community. That's when I developed my love for Sage, interacting with all the fans of Sage who were so passionate. I literally have a shirt that a Sage fan drew and sent in to Marvel, a t-shirt. It was when New Exiles ended and X-Men Forever was happening, which I worked on in the pre-production of it. By the time it actually came out, I was not working on it anymore. Mm-hmm. But it was a shirt with a beautiful drawing of Sage saying, like, please put Sage in X-Men Forever. And that was fun. Again, interacting with the fans can be really rewarding and great. So I like it a lot.
Awesome.
Although I will say, that being said, I like to do Twitter questions. I used to do Tumblr questions. That place got real negative. And so I stopped doing that. Now I do questions on Twitter again. And I do enjoy doing it. Like, way too many of the questions are, when are we going to see this character? Mm-hmm. Way too many. Like, that's the stuff that you'll see. That's a spoiler.
Well, that's all everybody really wants.
That's all anybody wants. That's all anybody wants.
Some of us just have some characters we are very into, and we want to see our Slug Boys come back. That's all. I don't know why you can't just give us that.
So you're talking about Maggot.
I mean, a little bit.
I promised. Man, talk about me making promises to the internet. What an idiot. I promised the fandom that I would write a song about an X-Man. And I said, just tell me who. And Maggot was the far and away the biggest winner. Which is ridiculous. I was expecting like Cyclops and being like, all right, I got to write about Cyclops.
Okay, fair enough.
But it was like, no, Maggot. I have written the bulk of the lyrics to the song.
Yes.
I haven't started writing the music. I said I would do it by the end of June, which is really soon. Fingers crossed I'll make it. But if not, I promise I will finish and premiere the song. I promise I will.
Wow.
That's amazing.
We're very excited about that, sir. Very excited.
I'm not going to be doing it in his dialect or his accent.
That's fine. No one can agree on what that is anyway. So
even though it is kind of in the first person, I'm just like, it's going to be my voice. Sorry. That's how it is.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So
makes sense.
Let's jump to one of the biggest things to happen recently. The last issue of X-Men Gold that has come out as of recording this had a bit of a swerve.
Yeah.
Spoilers for people who don't read the New York Times or aren't on the internet. Look, if you're listening to this podcast, you kind of know what's going on, but then skip ahead if you got this. So Kitty and Colossus aren't getting married in the current second, and Rogue and Gambit did? How'd that happen?
So, as I alluded to earlier, both of those are things that were in place when I got aboard the X-Men train, so to speak. And yeah, that I think they mentioned in the New York Times article, but the idea for the twist is something that came up at one of the Marvel Writer Summits. People were talking about what's going to happen in the books, and ideas just started getting thrown around. And when that idea came up, people were just too excited to let it go. It was like, oh my God, we got to do that. And I love it. If I can speak as a fan, now this is dangerous for me to do.
Oh, please keep going.
Here we go.
This is dangerous for me to do, because when I speak as a fan, X-Men fandom immediately assumes that means the power has gone to my head and I'm going to make every fan impulse come true. So, okay. So when I say, like, I don't think that this character works that way, and they're like, oh, he's going to ruin that character forever. Okay. That's not how it works. But I'm going to speak as a fan anyway, because again, I like to, and I'm a fan of comics. I am really happy that wedding didn't happen, because I am still mad at Colossus for cheating on Kitty in Secret Wars, and I will never forgive him ever.
Applauding.
And do you want to hear the worst thing? No. Okay. So you're applauding me now. Would you like to stop applauding me? Wait until I tell you this weird part. Everybody thinks I'm a crazy person when I say this part. So here's me throwing out all my credibility. I kind of feel like worse than the fact that he cheated on her is the fact that he didn't lie about it.
Oh,
because if he came back for like, again, she didn't speak English, they barely knew each other, and then she was dead forever. So he comes back and he goes, hey, it's over between us. I'm in love with this dead woman who I could never even communicate with. You and I are nothing. That is such a slap in the face. If he came back and he was like, she was like, what happened? He was like, nothing. You want to go out tonight? At least then I would feel like he cared about her.
This is amazing. I mean,
But the fact that he came back and was just like, hey, what on? You and I are over. It's Zaji forever. I was like, ugh.
the good part of that is he did then get into a bar fight where a bar got dropped on him. And everyone was like sitting back saying, well, look, Petey, you kind of did this to yourself here.
Yes. So as a result of that, I don't ever like them together. Even as much as I love the Joss Whedon run, I was always like, wow, you're getting them back together.
well, and can I talk about just how I think it plays so brilliantly to the fan base? I know that there's a lot of controversy right now about fan bases and who has control and fans asking for things and demanding blah 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 blah. I think that's a bunch of garbage, because ultimately we need to be respectful of the amazing artists and writers that are doing these things, but that doesn't stop when something does happen in a book that I think fans have been really hoping for, that it's still very exciting. So I think when Zack and I first started talking about Colossus and Kitty getting back together, we both shared that we had lots of reservations. And I think we've probably seen a lot of people on Twitter, especially, sharing their similar reservations to what you're talking about and the history of those two characters and why this wedding felt a little forced, if you will. So the fact that it does culminate in a bait and switch, and that the switch is going to be this amazing mini series that we had recently is going to turn into Mr. and Mrs. X. It's about the smartest switch you could possibly do in this situation. So well done.
I'm really happy with it. And again, I'm not the direct editor of that book. I supervise that book. I read every book and give notes on it, of course. But Darren Shan has been editing that book for a little while now, and he's doing a great job on it. Him and Mark pulled off an amazing issue. The art by David Marquez is so gorgeous.
Beautiful.
So gorgeous.
Beautiful.
He's
I was so happy.
That is awesome. I just want to get a couple more questions in before we move into the Twitter questions. So
absolutely.
You've obviously been an X reader for a long amount of time. So what is an X-Men story that you think doesn't get the respect it deserves? What's an underrated gem in the X-Men line?
Oh, geez. Well, again, I worry about this one. And although, you know what? I don't know if I have a great answer, because, like, my favorite X-Men ones are ones that it's like, yeah, everybody likes those ones, you dumbass. Like, of course. I really did love the Grant Morrison run, and I was bummed out at how much it was ignored / retconned, like, immediately afterwards. But, like, a lot of people feel that way unless they are fans of Magneto. What else? I don't think I have a super satisfying answer, other than that I do, still think Excalibur is, like, the best X comic ever, which is super a cheat. Like, it's only half an X book, but I love every moment of it.
Oh, that's good.
That's not a cheat.
Is it?
It's a great book.
A
lot of
people.
There's got to be some gem. Let me think about this.
Like, it feels like that's getting a critical reevaluation.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. I think that again, like people who read it when they were very young are getting older and remembering it fondly, and then looking back, and I think it still holds up. Maybe I'm wrong. I feel like it really holds up. There's okay. Let me have a good answer for this though. There's got to be a good answer for this. No, everything I have a hard time thinking of one that I'm like everybody else says that one's bad, but I like it. Like it's like no, everybody says they're good. Like I love Peter David's X Factor. I've always really enjoyed all of those series, but like it's not like that has a bad reputation. People love that book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't have a. Here's what I'll say. I think it's an awesome idea to just rip off a Shakespeare story, whether or not that turned out great. I still stand by it. And like if you read X-Men in a couple years and there's like all of a sudden Macbeth happens, don't be shocked because I think that's a fun idea.
That's the most shocking thing that I have heard on this podcast.
Spoiler alert.
None. Like, okay.
You're going to get a lot of people reading into that one.
For the record, I think She Lies with Angels is trash garbage, but that's not the point.
Like I said, I don't know if it necessarily turned out great, but I think it's a good idea.
All right. The last thing that we've got here for you before we throw it on over to Twitter is for the X line. In the short term and in the long term, what are you most excited for?
Oh, I mean, I'm most excited for things I cannot tell you about.
Yeah, I know. We were hoping to catch you up here. And it didn't work. You were prepared.
There's something. There's huge things that are going to be coming at the end of this year that I am super pumped for. There are huge things coming next year that I'm super pumped for. In the more immediate, I don't think anything. Like so many things are not announced. This is really difficult. Charles Soule is a great writer who I love working with. Working with him on Return of Wolverine is definitely a thrill. I'm very excited. And Steve McNiven obviously is an amazing artist.
Very good.
So exciting. So exciting. We've got stuff happening in October and November and December that is super exciting and going to be awesome.
Guys, we may have planned this interview like a month too soon. Our bad.
Well, hold on. So, Jordan, do we have any conventions lined up where we're going to be getting like giant reveals at like San Diego Comic-Con, New York Comic-Con, where some of this stuff's going to be unveiled in a grand manner?
I'm sure that at least some of these things will be revealed, if not at San Diego, then like right before it.
Okay.
So, because again, there's a lot of plans to announce. So I think it's going to be really exciting.
Awesome. Now we'll throw this over to Twitter questions. We've got a few from a few people who, they just ask questions. So first comes from Coltreg on Twitter, who asks, Jordan, does the D in Jordan D. White stand for D-Man?
For D-Man? No, definitely not. There used to be a little sign up in the Marvel bullpen that said it was Jordan Danger White because the first time I was ever drawn into a comic, I've been drawn into a lot of comics at this point, being having a mildly recognizable mustache and being just a chubby dude. People like to draw me into comics. Super fun. But the first time I was ever drawn into a comic was a Marvel Cinematic Universe tie-in comic.
Yes.
That I wasn't even editing. Nate Cosby was editing, and I think he had me drawn in as like a joke on me, except that I was like, yeah, absolutely, that's amazing. And Nick Fury beat me up. So people in the bullpen took a couple panels of me getting my ass kicked by Nick Fury and put it up as Jordan Danger White. And I was like, hell yeah. It's not actually Danger. And it's also not Delano, which is what Jake Thomas always says it is whenever we do anything together up here, anywhere together.
From our pal Genetic Ghost on Twitter, what was the discussion about making Shatterstar his own grandpa like? Let's talk about the Daddy Boros here, because
I will tell you, I'm going to let you in on some real behind the scenes magic right now. I okayed that.
Yes.
Me personally.
Yes.
Other people before me had been standing in the way of that. Peter David wanted to do that for a while, and previous editors on X Factor. I edited the end of X Factor. I assisted on a bunch of random parts of it, but the last arc of it I edited myself. And then I edited the first like bulk of all new X Factor as well. But other like Daniel Ketchum was like, no, we can't do that. That's ridiculous. Like we're no. And Peter told me, and I was like, yeah, absolutely. Let's do this. Let's make this happen. I love
It's
it.
so good.
I love that story. I love it. I love it. I love it.
It speaks to me in a weird way. Like, I have a weird relationship with X Factor in general, but that whole finally wrapping up the entire convoluted, messed up Shatterstarness of it all, it was perfect.
I mean, honestly, there's things, because what I liked about it too is that it solves things that are like so weird and so out there, but like, I mean, that's one of the things Peter is like specializes in is finding like weird continuity things and then kind of stitching them up in an entertaining way. The fact that there exist comics where Dazzler's just pregnant and then she just isn't pregnant, and they're like, ooh, let's not talk about that. And it was like, oh, really? I kind of prefer mind wipes and time travel as the possibilities for what could happen there.
So follow-up question, there was no conversation as part of that to finally explain who Benjamin Russell was?
Honestly, I'm a little surprised that Peter didn't try to go for that as well. But I think there just wasn't room in the amount of space that we had. I mean, as it is, there's a lot of crazy stuff in there.
Yeah.
Did we end it with Richter and Shatterstar going to the future to raise Shatterstar? Or no, to like drop Shatterstar off with the people who would raise him?
I believe something to that effect, yes.
Oh, it's bananas. Oh, you know what? That's actually I have a good answer now to the thing that doesn't get enough respect too, is All New X Factor. I loved All New X Factor. I thought it was such a fun concept, and I was kind of bummed that it didn't really take off.
It's great art, an interesting team, and it gave Gambit kitty cats.
Absolutely, it sure
awesome. Did. This will be a quick one, but this is coming from @SlickNickShady, who just wants to know, iBoy, can we get a final say on what's going on with him?
Well, all Marvel comics count, so he's dead, just like Cyclops is.
Oh,
that was the most interesting way you could have answered this. I wasn't expecting that. And I know that means nothing, but, conspiracy theory mind running like 1,000 miles an hour.
I just fell out of my chair.
Awesome. @Asimov_fangirl asks, if the Sailor Scout's abilities, and then they list some Sailor Scout abilities that I do not recognize because I do not watch that anime show, were caused by the X gene instead of magic, which X team will they join?
That is a wonderful question, and I should explain for those who don't know. This is a reference to the fact that I actually do a Sailor Moon podcast. We have a mostly weekly Sailor Moon podcast called Sailor Business, where me and Chris Sims are rewatching through every episode of Sailor Moon and talking about them. And we literally, they're like, half-hour show, so like 22 minutes, and we talk for over an hour per episode, going through everything that happened with a guest and going super in depth. But the answer for anybody who listens to that show is obvious. The Sailor Scouts, the inner Senshi, Sailor Moon, Sailor Mercury, Sailor Jupiter, Sailor Mars, Sailor Venus, they would obviously be on the X-Men, but the outer Senshi would be on X-Force because they are all willing to kill.
Alrighty then.
Just accept
Look,
it.
man, when Sims was on the show a couple weeks ago, I said it and I'll say it now. I have no idea what any of the Sailor Moon stuff is, but I keep hearing about it.
It's the power of friendship and good feelings to overcome all badness.
like My Little
Yeah.
Pony.
Honestly, I couldn't get into My Little Pony, but I tried watching one episode because by calling it Friendship is Magic, it made me think of Sailor Moon. And so I watched one episode and I was like, oh, that's not enough like Sailor Moon for me to care. So I stopped.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I've got a 2-year-old, so I have an intimate understanding of the My Little Pony cinematic universe. There's a lot going on there. Some magical girl stuff is definitely involved at certain points, but yeah, it's a whole thing.
I believe it.
I think we'll get one more Twitter question in here, and this is one that we got asked in several forums, and obviously you can't give any spoilers on stuff, but Emma Frost, something going on with her? I mean, just wink.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Cool.
She's great. Listen, this is so I alluded earlier to me talking as a fan being dangerous. This is another one of those ones because I have said that I don't think she works as well as an X-Man. I like her better as a, let's say, antagonist. Because if I say a villain, everybody freaks out. She's not a villain. Everything she did was wonderful. Great. But as an antagonist, to speak in storytelling terms, I like her better when she is in opposition with the X-Men. That being said, I think she's awesome. I think she's super great. There are plans for her. More than one plan. By which I mean she will appear in more than one place.
That's exciting for a lot of people. I just started rewatching the Wolverine and the X-Men TV show with my son because I found it all on Blu-ray for $10 at the local Walmart. And Emma Frost is delightful in that. And it's just kind of reignited all of the, oh yes, I do love her kind of feelings.
Yeah, she's super fun, man. She's super fun. I just don't. I'm not a huge fan of when villains, and I'm just going to use the word villains because we're talking in broad terms. When villains become good guys, most of the time, not 100% of the time. Sometimes it works out amazingly. I prefer Emma Frost as an antagonist. I prefer Magneto as an antagonist. Does that mean they will always be such in my comic books? No, because I don't make comic books alone, first of all, and I also don't make them as a dictator. I am a collaborator. I work with writers and artists and other editors. You know, we all have a discussion. Do I voice my opinion? Sure, but if somebody's telling a great story, it doesn't matter if it goes against one of my preferences. What matters most is the good story.
Yeah,
she did kill Firestar's pony.
She's done a lot of terrible things.
Rest in peace, Butter Rum.
She's you can be evil,
She's made choices. She's made choices, but I think that's why we all kind of love her. She's a wild card in all this.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. She's super fun.
Awesome. Well, that will, I think that'll wrap it up for this episode of Battle of the Atom. If you liked this show, you can mosey on over to patreon.com/Battle of the Atom. That you can toss in some money there if you want, or don't. I don't really care. It keeps the Zencaster and hosting all running and all that stuff. But you know, if you enjoy it, do that. If not, whatever. If you do enjoy it enough to support at the $2 a month level, though, you can get an entire episode of this podcast crafted around a story suggestion of your choice. And we got some interesting ones going in the near future. That'll be a lot of fun. If you can't support monetarily, that's cool. If you want to leave us a rating or review on iTunes or whatever podcast getting thing you've got, that helps out. It would be kind of cool if you guys did some more of that, because we haven't got one in like a month or so. Either way, don't let me guilt you into it, even though I am desperately trying to. Beyond that, you can check out everything that happens over on XavierFiles.com. That's where I have a bunch of X-Men news, podcasts, articles, different fun stuff like that. Or you can go to Twitter at XavierFiles and just look at all of my inane ramblings about X-Men throughout the week. Adam, where can people find you online?
Guys, you can always follow me on Twitter at Arthur Stacy. If anybody's interested in getting a zine of the last issue of Bish and Jubes, which is the search for Bish and Jubes, you can get one for just $1. I will print it out and mail it to your house as long as you live within the United States. And if you don't, you can DM me. We'll figure something out. So for just $1, you can get a copy of the latest issue. And that's at atomrec.bigcartel.com. Jordan, where can people find you online?
They can follow me on Twitter at Crackshot, except instead of an O, it's a 0. Because I just have a confusing name. It's the Crackshot is the name of the superhero I pretended to be when I was a child.
Huh.
And it has a 0 because when I joined AOL, Crackshot without a 0 with an O instead of a 0 was already taken.
I
I
love
feel
it.
like most people have a very bad reason why their screen name is what it is if they've had it for more than like 8 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And they can also find me on Twitter at Sailor Business, where the aforementioned Sailor Moon podcast is located,
Nice.
or at sailorbusiness.com. So Sailor Moon is super fun. Also, just so you know, you don't have to have watched Sailor Moon to listen to it. I actually know people who have never watched Sailor Moon who love the show because we recap every single thing that happens in it. So they just experience it through me and Chris.
That's
Pretty ridiculous.
That's absolutely
That's
buck
great.
wild.
That's great.
Well, this interview has been great. Jordan, thank you again for coming on. It's been a real treat.
I agree. I had a really good time. Thank you for having me.
Jordan.
Awesome. Next week, we are going to be coming back with some X-Men stories about teens doing teen stuff. We got some new X-Men for the people of you who are really, really into Academy X, and we got some interesting other stuff going on with that. But until then, this has been Battle of the Atom. We hope you survived the experience.
Get it!